Hello everyone and welcome back to UK Low Carb, and I'm really excited because I love doing these live broadcasts, and in particular this evening because I'm really honoured to be joined by Dr. Jen Unwin. Now, before I go over to Jen, just to let you know, this is actually about a whole series we've been doing together, all about food addiction. We've focused on what is an addiction. We've looked at ways to kind of understand if you might have a food addiction itself, and then we've gone into a lot of detail around that and also how to help yourself through that addiction. And this is now the ultimate final show in that series on the podcast UK Low Carb. So without much further ado, let me welcome to the live recording here with Jen Unwin. So welcome Dr. Jen Unwin to this live recording on UK Low Carb.
Hi everyone. Hi Dan. Great to be here. I got really hypnotized by the starting video. I'm in the zone.
I thought I'd better keep talking just to give you a bit of a chance to snap out of it again.
Right. Yeah. Back in the room.
Yeah. So I just want to say the series was really great to make with you. Thank you for doing that. And it was, I do talk a lot about being on a journey, and I think that expression is sometimes overused, but in my case, it really was. And I felt like I understood myself a lot better and how I work, which was quite interesting. And I don't know if anyone who's watching live, who's followed the series, also feels the same. But should we just talk through the things we discussed in that series, all about food addiction?
Yeah, let's do that. And then I'm interested to hear, actually, I was going to ask you what, if anything, having that information, what difference it had made to you, because I don't know if you know, but Heidi Yeaver and I, who's a nutritionist, we do run some groups, and we run weekends and things. And it's kind of the information that we go over in detail, as well as the stuff that we all know about low carb. So it's putting the two things together and then giving people the support and encouragement to sort of keep going, because that's the difficult bit, really, isn't it? It's that we all know quite a lot of this stuff. Some of this is extra information, the stuff we've been talking about over the last few weeks. But mostly we know what we should eat, really. It's not, people will say, what should I eat? Really, don't you? You know what you should eat and what you shouldn't eat, because you know the things you can't moderate. So it's not that we're lacking in that knowledge. It's how to put that into practice in our own lives. And that's the journey, isn't it? And it's unique to all of us. Yeah. So
can I just talk on that point, though, because that's really interesting what you say there. I feel like a lot of the information about low carb and keto is about the science of metabolic health and how your hormones and how the food affects your hormones. But the psychological dimension, I think, really needs to be talked about a lot more, because just in the same way you said, what not to eat, I feel like when it comes to low carb and keto, we know the foods that are good for us metabolically, that are good for our health. But actually, you then have to ask yourself the question, well, but why are you eating the sugar or whatever it might be that has no nutritional value to your body whatsoever, but you're still eating it and it's got nutritional value? If it was literally just the science of nutrition, nobody would be eating this stuff. But there's a psychological element, which I think is really interesting. And that's the human dimension around this whole topic that I think we should delve into, not just tonight, but also as a community.
And on top of that, the some of us who have this problem to quite a severe degree actually struggle to moderate some of the quite nutritious and sort of nutrient dense foods like nuts and cheese, for example. I mean, dairy is a really typical one that people do talk about when they come and work with us, is that they may have actually been keto for quite a few years, but they're still struggling with the nuances of the addiction side of it, the sort of volume eating side of it, the sort of behaviors that go along with it. So it's kind of weirdly simple at one level, and then incredibly complicated, really, on an individual level to sort of find what's right for yourself. And that can change over time. It's Bitten Johnson, who's our mentor, who's obviously coming over for the conference, is going to be we're starting a 4-day intensive with Bitten on Sunday, which is very exciting, down in Bristol. And she says it's the most difficult. It's the first addiction that we get, because it's the only really sort of psychoactive substance that we give kids. We don't give them nicotine and caffeine and alcohol on the whole, but we love to see them eat sugar. So it's the substance we get. So our brains are very kind of wired from a young age. Societally, it's kind of encouraged, you know, all the celebrations that we have around food. We're kind of seen as a bit weird, you know, if we're low carb or, you know, completely sugar free. It's everywhere. We have to eat, you know, it's really, it is a difficult habit to kick, really. And particularly in the society that we live in. Anyway, I was supposed to be recapping for the audience, wasn't I? And we've got, of course, because we love chatting
Well, I'll tell you
about
what,
this.
before you do, just to say to everyone who's here today, wherever you are in the world, you're more than welcome. Jen is going to be answering some questions in a moment. So if you've got anything you'd like to ask Jen, and it could also be comments as well, if you want to share a bit about your own experiences, I'd love to hear that, because, you know, this is a community, it's give and take, and it's not just questions, because you might not have any questions, but you might want to share an experience or how you've dealt with this, your own journey, and how you've dealt with addiction, or maybe you've faced up to it, or maybe you think that you can't be addicted to carbs and sugar. I want to hear from anyone really about your opinion. Just leave your comments either on the Facebook group or on the YouTube live, and Jen and I can see those, so they'll come up, and then we can discuss those. So you can be part of the conversation as well. And just before we do that, we're just going to have a little bit of a précis of the conversation so far in the 4 episodes with Jen, just to get you thinking if you've got anything you want to say. Right, Jen, sorry about that. Over to you.
Yeah, so obviously go and watch the episodes if you want the stuff in more detail, or read Fork in the Road. I've got my screen blurred, so you can't read it.
Blurry, yeah.
Fork in the Road, Jen Unwin on Amazon. All profits go to the Public Health Collaboration, so you're supporting an excellent cause, and more work like this if you go ahead and buy a copy. And we're about to bring out a journal diary as well. So if anybody wants to kind of work on keeping track of stuff, there'll be a Fork in the Road diary as well on Amazon soon. So we did four episodes, and the first one was really like, what is addiction, or how would you know if you had a food addiction type problem? And again, I'm going to be talking about this at the conference as well, on the Friday, on May the 20th. The whole day is really about this, but we'll be talking about these particular issues. So what is addiction? And we talked about the acronym CRAVED, which gives you the 6 sort of signs to look out for. A sort of craving or compulsion that you can't resist, you know, even though you want to, and you're saying to yourself, definitely no biscuits today, and then you end up having biscuits sort of despite your better intentions. R is reaching for more. So that's that thing about, you know, 2 biscuits is enough initially, and then it's 3 and 4, and then in the end you've worked up to, you know, only the whole packet is good enough. A is for activities neglected, which is this phenomenon where the more we get into the food, the more we sort of get out of doing all the other things that are meaningful in life, like exercising, socializing, you know, concentrating on work and family, things like that. We'd sort of narrow down and get just really into the food. So, you know, V is for volume, so it's having really always eating more than you intended, finding it hard to sort of have a reasonable amount. E is for exclusion, and that really is just to pick up the idea that when you try and stop, you might get some withdrawal symptoms like shakes or grumpiness or headaches or gastrointestinal symptoms, and you feel pretty grim. It's that sort of low blood sugar type thing.
It's a bit like sort of a cold turkey sort
cold
of thing,
turkey feeling, yeah. And then D is for damage, and for me this is the sort of in a way the sort of really core symptom is that we continue to do these behaviors despite knowing that they're doing us some physical or mental harm. So we might already be type 2 or pre-diabetic, we might be overweight, we might know that our mental health is suffering, because it will do. For those of us who've been on a high sugar diet, we know our mental health isn't as good, and it does damage how the brain works. But we, despite even knowing that and noticing it in ourselves that we feel worse mentally and physically, we still have that compulsion to do it. And that's really, those are really the hallmarks of any addiction. Obviously we're talking about food, but obviously alcohol, nicotine, etc. And
can I ask about food addiction for a moment? Because whenever I describe my, I think, addiction around not all food, but actually it's only particular types of food, and I wondered how common that was. So for me, it's certainly carbohydrate in the form of wheat flour. It's interesting, you know, chips and baked potatoes, spuds generally, I don't really care for. I don't mind them. I wouldn't really miss them. But certainly, like breaded anything is my
Yes.
downfall. You know, a battered sausage, battered cod. Yeah, I'm all over that, and I can't
It's a
stop.
Mars bar.
Yeah. So do
Yeah.
you find that there's certain types of food we're talking about, and I don't want to put words in your mouth if there's not, or is it
No, no,
is it
definitely.
generally
Yeah.
a food addiction?
Yeah. No. The key culprits are sugars and grains, and ultra processed foods. Yeah, because they tend to have the sugar, the wheat, and the fat and the salt, you know, in that sort of glorious combination, the sort of
Yeah,
Dorito effect, the pizza, the donuts, those things that have been sort of made by man to be
yeah,
and
yeah,
women to be delicious and irresistible. Yeah, it's sort of commercial foods really, but sugars and grains are the main ones. And you know, when they've done research looking at what people binge on or what people say are their addictive foods, those are the top ones. And then interestingly, cheese did sneak in at number 10.
oh,
That was the
interesting.
first real food that sneaks into the list. The other things are ice cream, biscuits, crisps, pizzas.
Which, well, ironically, cheese is the very first thing processed by humans like 8,000 years ago. So isn't that interesting? Like
Isn't
it
it?
does from a natural source, but it's also processed to make it into something different. Isn't that
Yeah,
interesting? Yeah, it's not
yeah.
ultra processed, but it is
I
well, I
mean,
suppose which cheese you get.
dairy is designed to grow baby animals, isn't it? It's designed to be delicious. It has actually got that
Yeah,
combination of fat and carbohydrate like nuts have. They're the
yeah,
only, you know, there's rare things in nature that have that sort of that combination, and we just designed to love them because that's how we survived. And
yeah,
when we lived in that environment where we only got those things in the winter, in the autumn, to get fat to survive the winter, it was all good. I would have been a survivor. You would have been a survivor.
yeah.
We're very
We've been
lucky
there
that
at the front.
and that's why we're here today, because our ancestors have passed that down. You know, there's definitely a genetic component. There's definitely this kind of evolutionary thing. That's a really important thing that we went through with was, you know, it's not our fault that we behave like this. It's actually because we live in this wacky food environment. We've been exposed to these weird foods. They've hijacked our dopamine pathways in our brain, which was what we talked about in session 2,
Yeah, we're
which
gonna talk
how
about
is
that.
food addictive?
That was fascinating to me. You said at the beginning of this, you know, which part really had an impact on me, and I was kind of most taken aback by what you said about the hormones, and of course how the addictions feed hormones, but also how the receptors in the brain. This is what I didn't understand. The receptors
Mm.
in the brain get either taken away or damaged. I don't want to get the language wrong here, but
Down regulated is what they say.
right,
Down regulated, yeah. So that the more say, let's take sugar. You know, the more sugary foods that you have, you get these kind of dopamine spikes in response to that, which is the thing that makes it addictive, because the brain loves, in a sense, we like that sort of dopamine, and that's the same as other substances of addiction, same process. But the brain tries to rebalance by knocking out a few knocking out a few receptors for dopamine. So although you might have a lot of dopamine slooshing around, it's not available to the brain. And you really need dopamine because it's the motivation neurotransmitter. So that's why we feel more sluggish, more flat, you know, in
yeah,
the post sugar um times. We actually feel, you're actually sort of digging yourself a hole, really. You're going to feel more and more depressed, and then people get stuck in the pattern of trying to get the hit by having more and more of the substance, but actually damaging the brain in a sense more and more, and getting deeper and deeper into
yeah,
the
there's more of a numbing feeling, I suppose, as time goes on. But the interesting thing I remember you saying in episode 4 is that actually then the reversal happens, whereby when you cut out the sugar and the carbs,
Mhm.
your receptors get upgraded. I don't know if that's the right expression,
Mm,
whereby you have more
yeah.
of them. So if you then
Mm,
hit the sugar and the carbs again, you get a massive sensation
yeah.
of ecstasy almost, and then that means that effectively you then you want it, and the addiction kicks in with a vengeance afterwards.
Again. Yeah. So for those of us with proper food addiction, it's really important to be abstinent from
Yeah.
sugars and carbohydrates. Yeah, because of that. Um, you know, we say that the addiction's doing press ups in the background, even if you've maybe done a year and you feel like you've got a handle on it, but then you have a little bit, as you say, the brain lights up, and then it can be really hard for people to get back on the wagon, to sort of use that terminology. So you know, this doesn't, I'm not saying this applies to everybody. Most people, if you ask them, they know actually. So we've been doing this clinical study, and we just asked people to volunteer if they thought they had a food addiction. And when we actually did the screening, 100% of people who thought they had food addiction did have food addiction. So we screened them on the questionnaires, and they were right. And David says the same in practice, that when he says to people, oh, do you think there might be a bit of an addictive problem here? They say, yes, I can't stop eating bread or cornflakes or whatever it is. And they do know. I just think it's something that we need to keep talking about, because people haven't necessarily heard of it, and they wonder why they can't stick to the low carb or the keto diet, even though it's good for them for whatever reason, diabetes, weight, mental health, whatever reason they're doing it. Some people still struggle to stick to it, and it may be that there's this sort of addictive component. So obviously it's not everybody. Some people can have the odd keto treat, they can, some people can even have the odd cheat day, but they're not food addicts. So I don't want everyone listening to think, right, I've got to sort of abstain from all these things forever. It's very individual. So I have to be quite strict. You can probably flex it a bit more. There's some people we know, as I say, can, have a week off and just go back to it, no problem at all.
Exactly that point, and that's what I reflected on for me. So and I think I shared on this series, but I don't mind saying here that I see that, and Dave Wolf's group is amazing. I actually joined Dave Wolf and Anna and Judith for their live, what's it called again, their group? I can't remember now. Sugar X, that's it. And I was talking to them, and I was talking about, the patterns that I have. And I was in a room full of addicts, and I thought, yeah, I belong here. This makes sense, because I can't keep things in a little bubble. A cheat day is not a cheat day for me. It becomes a week, becomes a month, and then I don't know where it's going to end. So I have to just completely stop things. And what's been really interesting, I've lost 5 kilos in the last 3 weeks now. Being very strict on keto, not letting anything slip in. And then last week, I suddenly got to the point after 2 weeks where I was like, oh, I just, why not just have that thing? I was like, that's interesting. Where's that voice coming from?
Where's that whisper? Because that's the sort of addicted part of your brain. Oh, it's fine. It's your birthday.
You've done so well.
My birthday last week. It's your birthday. You can handle it. It's fine. Just one. You'll get back on tomorrow.
And it's your anniversary, I saw as well, Jen. So your birthday. So there you go. So you're an excuse to celebrate. Why not? But that's exactly it. People like us, and I won't put you in this camp, but people like me, we will then start a pattern which is negative, and we don't want it. So we have to find ways. And I think that's the other thing that's really important. It's all very well saying you have an addiction. It's all very well saying don't eat these things. It's the strategy around that which is essential, isn't it? And that's what we're also talking about towards the end of the series. And hopefully tonight with some people, if you want to share that, that'd be great. Yeah, because it's really important.
How do you keep going? How do you kind of build a life outside the food, where you're trying to sort of concentrate on other things that give you, this sort of steady, well-being and, sense of well-being. And how can you get that in other ways in your life? And again, that's completely unique for all of us, isn't it? It's, is it going to be yoga for you? Is it going to be painting, singing, I don't know, gardening, all of these things that can, help people keep a bit of balance? I can see some really good questions coming in.
Yeah, well, we're going to come to those now then. So anyone who's watching on YouTube, Facebook, wherever it might be, we see all your questions in the same place. So leave a comment. I think the only place where you might have to put your name down is on Facebook, because sometimes it can be a bit funny about showing the names. Firstly, let's go through to who's here this evening. So Beth Hawken, good to see you. Thanks for joining us. Hey, Jack, I want to come to your question in a moment because I know you've got something for us. Nicola Locke, who's a local to you, I think, isn't she?
Hi, Nicola, she's a saint. She helps us out with our low carb group, and she's an ambassador for the PHC. So it's great
And
to
she's
know.
also been on this podcast, so check out her episode.
Yeah,
And then here we've got Jen, who's saying, when we're talking about what's your, whiskey of choice, I suppose, and she went for good old chippy chips. So there you go. I
chippy
can relate
chips.
to that. Fries
Yeah.
for those in the States. And the first of our questions is from Jack, who says, do you find food addiction is more prevalent in people with ADHD or autism?
Yeah, it's a great question, Jack. And actually, partly because this isn't really it's not a yet well recognized condition. It's not a medical diagnosis yet. We're campaigning for it to be included in the various manuals of sort of official medical diagnoses. So because of that, there hasn't been a lot of research funded, or a lot of, there aren't a lot of clinics. But there is research showing that people with addiction are more sort of distractible or inattentive. So it could be, and also you tend to find that when people manage to give up the sugar and the gluten, particularly, that they have improvement in their attention symptoms. So there does seem to be some kind of a link. And before then, we mentioned Dave Wolf, who's a dietitian in the States, who works with SugarX Global, which is a food addiction community, and he has ADHD, and he was on quite a bit of medication, and he'll talk about that. He's probably on a podcast somewhere talking about it, and he's managed to improve a lot and come off lifelong medication since he's kind of got food sober. So the answer, Jack, is probably, but there isn't a lot of research on it, and it's definitely worth a try. I don't know what your situation is, or whether you've tried sort of keto, no sugar, no grains, but it's definitely worth a try to see how that affects the symptoms of ADHD and autism.
See, one thing that being a teacher, I remember the children who had ADHD, they very much talked about sugar being a massive problem for those kids and said, we should really help these children to kick sugar. And so let's try and do that. And we actually found a massive improvement. Now, I'm not making the next step to say the link to addiction is proved. I don't know either way, but I just know as a teacher, sugar was seen as being a huge problem for the way those kids were focusing, concentrating, and it just wasn't helping them at all. And by cutting the sugar, we saw a massive difference. Autism as well, I don't know a lot about, apart from when I was a teacher with special needs kids, and but it'd be interesting for adults and how they respond to that. I wish there was more studies on this stuff, because this is really, really important.
It is, we need stuff on the brain, sort of particularly brain imaging, but also it wouldn't be a difficult study to do, to kind of get people to fill in questionnaires and work out, if there was some kind of association there. I mean, it is starting now, this whole movement for sort of nutritional psychiatry. There's a couple of people in the States. There's Georgia Eads and Chris Palmer, both doctors in the States, who are Chris Palmer's got a book coming out soon called Brain Energy, which looks amazing. I'm definitely going to get it. And it's all about how does the brain sort of function best, really. And I guess he's going to be talking about how the brain loves ketones, and how you can get more your brain sort of working really well with nutrition. So looking forward to, and I think Georgia Eads writing a book as well. So it's coming. This whole field is definitely developing.
Fantastic. I mean, there's also a good question to ask there, and that's what gets the money for research. That's one of the problems, isn't it? And this is an area that there's not in the interest of big money necessarily to try and cure, is it? But let's be honest.
I mean, it's actually kind of the opposite, isn't it? And if you look at in the literature, the papers that sort of say, oh, sugar addiction doesn't exist, when you look at the conflicts of interest of the people who've written those papers, they're basically funded by the corn refiners. There's one paper in particular that people are always citing, saying food addiction isn't real, but it was supported by the Rip Foundation, and Dr. Rip got it's in the New York Times if you Google it. He gets like a $40,000 a month retainer from the corn refiners or something like that. So
Wow.
the food manufacturers are obviously motivated to sort of rubbish this idea, and it's like nicotine all over again. I mean, they stood up, didn't they, and said nicotine wasn't addictive. We all
Yeah.
know it is addictive, and it's done terrible harm to people's health. So we're at that same point really where the food industry are in denial about the addictive nature of their product.
Yeah. Yeah. For
Well,
now,
I'm not sure they are in denial, but they're hoping
I think
that
they.
it will.
Yeah, I think they know.
I think they know. I think they probably know, and that's why they spend money on research and the message. They spend a lot on. I mean, was it Coca-Cola? I can't remember the figure. Coca-Cola spend the most incredible amount of money, on this stuff.
Yeah, yeah, and to be omnipresent in kids' lives, that's what they do.
Mhm.
Nicola, by the way, welcome to the show tonight, the recording. She just shared there, I'm the same. If I go off if I go off, I'm off for a few months. I struggle to
Yeah,
get back on. And
yeah.
then she also said, I have to be all or nothing. And I think that's
Yeah, it's
exactly I relate
very typical of the
Mm,
addict's brain, and we often say this, we're very sort of black and white, or it's all or nothing. I'm kind of on it, or I'm off it really spectacularly. Um, Addicts have these. We're usually sort of quite high achieving people, sort of motivated people. But yeah, we're a bit all or nothing, or we like something, we want to get it done, we want to know now what the answer is. And so we struggle sometimes with this kind of idea that actually we're going to have to really work on this probably all our lives. There isn't there isn't one food plan that I can just say to you, eat this and you'll be fine, you'll never have another craving, kind of thing. We have to sort of kind of be vigilant every day, really. But
yeah, I think know
it's
yourself.
okay,
That's the key,
we can
isn't
do
it?
it.
What is your trigger for you? That's the thing. I just can't have breaded food. I can't have bread. I can't have pastry, because
Mhm.
if I do, that's it. Whereas actually rice and chips, they're not a trigger for me. I don't eat them because they're not good for me, but they're not a
Yeah,
trigger in the same way. But the
yeah,
floury stuff, I can't go near that. So I just have to be honest and say, not for
yeah.
me. I think,
Not my food. Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely. I mean,
sounds like
yeah,
Nicola
I'm
knows
the
that
same.
too.
Anything in a packet, anything crunchy, salty, yeah,
Yeah.
not good.
Yeah.
Not good for me.
So, Jen here, I don't actually know what this means, so I don't know if you can
Oh yeah,
understand.
I think she literally ends up with. I think she means diarrhea and vomiting when she falls
I
off.
thought
Yeah,
that's what it might be, but I don't want to put
when
words in
you
her mouth that
fall off
might be
the
wrong.
wagon, yeah, you feel terrible, don't you? And you've still done it, and then we sometimes we go ahead and do it again. And you kind of can't believe. I was just saying, I'm a migraineur, and
Me too.
yeah, and I think that's another thing actually is quite in common with sugar addicts. And I know that if I fall off the wagon or have a drink, I'm really much more likely to get a migraine. I'm fine if I'm just really clean with the food and regular with the food. I don't even get a headache. I'm completely fine. And yet, I occasionally, ridiculously, will still do it.
Yeah, yeah. Just for
It's
those
like
who are
you forget.
listening,
In the moment, you forget. Your brains
yeah,
sort of forget that's
yeah,
ever happened, and you think it won't happen. It's like magical thinking, "Oh, it won't happen this time." And then it does.
yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. Just for those who are listening on the podcast, you can't see. So Jen here, who's one of the people asking a question, just said that she ends up with V and D, so vomit and diarrhea. I believe that is. Yeah, if that's not, I'm really sorry, Jen. We thought it was vomit
Yeah.
and diarrhea. It might be something
Well,
completely different. Um, so with V and D, she falls off the wagon, and I can certainly relate to that. Now this is a bit longer. This one. This is from Claire.
yeah.
And I think it ends abruptly. So I don't know if they're supposed to be. Sorry, can you still see Jen there? I don't know.
Yeah, I can. Yeah.
Hello. She says, Claire says, good to be here. I started kicking sugar at the beginning of lockdown and I've tweaked my diet towards low carb ever since. That's interesting because I think, and I don't know what you think as well, Jen, a lot of people, and I include myself in this, started eating poorly in the lockdown because it's like the end of the world. What's to lose, And especially if you're locked up next to a fridge, it's more easy to eat things, isn't it, than
I
otherwise?
think it went. I think it went one of two ways. I think some of us, some went like that, and then some really took the opportunity, to kind of not bring the stuff in the house,
Yeah,
uh,
you get
and
on top of it
obviously
all.
Claire was getting on top of it, which is excellent. So
Yeah,
she
she
doesn't
says she
eat
no longer
or
eats
dunk
pouches of
biscuits.
sweets or
Excellent.
dunce biscuits, yeah, in hot drinks. So Phil, I've kicked my sugar addiction. But that's interesting as well. Maybe it's there in the background, Claire, and it would come back with a vengeance. So I guess just always be careful. I also now cook low carb bread and crackers, so the majority of my food is low carb. My problem is still got the habit of wanting to snack when I'm driving or
Oh,
a
interesting.
repetitive task to do.
Yeah.
I choose low carb snacks, but I'm not necessarily hungry. That's
Yes.
interesting. The
Now, this
snacking.
is so interesting. This is kind of a behavioral thing. This is a lot of people in our group struggle with things like eating because they've always eaten in front of the telly. You know, they're still eating in front of the telly. They might, like you say, there might be low carb snacks, but it's still something they don't really want to be doing. So it's how to sort of break those habits, replace them with other things. Driving. I mean, I suppose the thing is, try not to take them with you in the first place, or, you know, driving gloves, or, you know, just trying to, you know, if it's a short journey, do an experiment of trying not to eat. It's just breaking those habits, or, you know, finding something else to do with your hands. I'm a big knitter, so I kind of, in the evenings, it stops me eating because I'm knitting, and you can't eat and knit at the same time. So, you know, everybody's unique, but it's just picking off these habits. It sounds like you've really come a long way, and you just need to keep going. You know, take the next thing that you feel is sort of, you know, problematic for you, and take some small steps to do something different. And that's the journey, in a sense. Like you were saying, Dan, it is a journey. It's like we call the book Fork in the Road. You know, we're taking a different path, but there are still always more steps we can take, more improvements, little tweaks we can make. Have a try, do something different. Does it work? Is it better for you? Yes, carry on doing it. No, try something else.
Yeah, definitely. And Claire just came back to say it feels more like it's a habit she needs to break
Yeah,
than an addiction, which is fair enough. Isn't it
exactly.
interesting when smokers give up? I remember, especially when they had smoking in pubs here, and they don't anymore. But I remember a lot of smokers saying, "Oh, it's what do you do with your hands after a meal?" Because they're so used to then getting the cigarette out and the little rituals around the cigarette in the hand and in the mouth and lighting it. And actually, it's the habit of doing it, wasn't it? Which is great. So
Yes. And they tend to put on weight when they quit smoking. People
yeah.
tend to put on weight, or when people give up drinking, saying they tend to sort of eat more sweet things to sort of still get that dopamine hit, and you say have something to do.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah. Very, very normal that. Here we have a message from New Zealand. So thank you. It's nice to know people around the world are listening to this. That's very
Yeah.
exciting. And then we have a question here from Kate. Hi, Kate here. I'm a registered nurse with many years of addiction experience. She's lost 6 stone and kept off for
Wow.
14 years. That's brilliant,
Yeah.
isn't it?
Yeah.
Have an amazing diet cook from scratch. Okay. Also, you cook from scratch your diet, I think that's what it means, but still can't kick the sugar. I have a healthy
Yeah.
BMI and a fab fitness levels, age 53, get great control over life, but still can't kick the sugar. That's interesting, isn't it?
It's really interesting. And what I suppose my question would be, you know, what would be better if you could kick the sugar? You know, what's going to get you over that last hump? Because it sounds like you've really done amazingly. Um, and yeah, we'd need to know more about the kind of particular things and times. And but I suppose I would start with what would be better if you could kick the sugar, trying to find that motivation. You know, what's over the finish line, if you like, that would be
Yeah.
better than where you are now. Because if, you know, things are fine now, you're not going to be motivated to kick it, because you know, that is quite a toughie, really. You've got to have some sort of reason, some sort of why to help you get there.
See, it's interesting because I was talking to somebody the other day about their diabetes, and she said that she has a little bit of chocolate every single night, and I mean like Cadbury's, not not even like a dark chocolate, just dairy milk, which is like virtually just a sugar bar with a little bit of chocolate in it. And I was like, why? And she said, because they whoever they are trying to take our sugar, like our chocolate, away from us, and that's the last thing I have to hold on to. And I thought, hold what? The whole mindset's very odd, but almost
Yeah,
like and I thought, and I'm not saying because she might be listening.
like a rebellion.
That does sound like an addiction to me, like that kind of. Why take my
Yeah.
sugar away? Isn't that weird? Almost like we wouldn't say
Yeah.
about anything else, would you? I just, well, maybe cigarettes you would, but I just find that interesting, really.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah.
so thank you, Kate. Any more details, please let us know, and it'd be great to hear. And Gemma just asking you there about what's the final thing you needed to help you on your journey, just over that
What
kind
would
of
be
last month.
better? What would be
Yeah,
better in your life if you did manage to kick sugar? That'd be interesting.
yeah. Definitely. The next question, by the way, has got some really long words. I don't know what they even are. So, adrenal insufficiency and
Yeah.
what was that?
Hypothyroidism. Low thyroid level, low thyroxine.
Oh, I see. Okay. And
Yeah.
find that keto low carb food is the only thing that's given me
Yeah.
some energy back. That's
Yeah,
interesting.
brilliant. Yeah, and it does. I mean, David's found that. So for people that don't know, he's a GP in the UK. He has found that thyroid function improves in his patients when they go keto low carb. So it's another reason to do it, really. Yeah. So that's good, Jen, that you found something. And obviously that's going to help you stick to it, because who wants to feel who wants to feel rubbish, really? If you've got that energy back, you're going to want to keep going, which is brilliant.
Yeah, which is great. And then Kate's just come back again, which is great to hear from you. I try it every day and promise myself the next day I will do it. I can do it if I stay at home, but not if it's is in my way. Now that's
Yeah.
interesting. So it's almost the environment is the thing that's tripping you up there.
Yes.
Because I remember you saying to me, Jen, 2 years ago on the podcast about having maybe your own cupboard if you live with a family who eat sugar
Yeah.
and stuff, and they keep their stuff in that cupboard out of your way. And if you don't have that problem, just make sure your environment is clean of the thing that's going to be the problem for you. And I can
Yes.
see it sounds like Kate's had that situation at home, but it's when you're out and about, it might be more of a challenge because it's in your face and it's people offer us you stuff.
People offer it to us, don't they? They literally. Yeah, I had that experience. We went out for my birthday lunch, and the chef guys all came out and sang happy birthday and brought me a dessert with like a firework thing in it, and all sang happy birthday and kind of stood around waiting for me to eat this dessert. It was right in my face.
A lot
But
set
yes,
up there, yeah.
it was a setup. Yeah. Yes, so but that's great if you can stay away from it when you're at home. And then it's just trying to develop strategies or think of things to say. I think sometimes we feel like it's rude, or that we need to find a form of words to say that we don't eat those things, or we don't want them. Make sure you're not really hungry when you go out would be another trick, Kate. Make sure you've had your protein and your fat for the day, so you're not actually hungry when you're out and about, or take stuff with you. I think that's another thing. People think, oh, I'll be fine, I'll find something while I'm out, and you can't, can you? Sometimes, like airports, train stations, you need to plan ahead and take those good nutrient foods with you, so that you can not be hungry and stay on plan.
Yeah, that's exactly my strategy as well. So an omelette is a blessing, and I find that I don't eat breakfast, but if I'm in a situation where, say, for instance, I'm going to London, and there are kind of like coffee stands at the station which have pastry at them, and there's like McDonald's at the other end of the station. There's all these real fast food, ultra processed rubbish places, and I just think, what, if I have an omelette with some cheese on it in the morning, that's me done until that evening. I don't feel remotely hungry, which really helps. And then it becomes you're not hungry, so you don't. That's that first step, I think. If you're hungry, then your brain can very quickly say, "Go and get that food." But if you're not hungry and you're full, and actually the same about protein and fat, which fills you up in a way that makes you not want to eat, which is really nice. Not just that you're full and you don't need to eat, but you don't really want to eat because you feel so full, and that really helps me. So I sort of strategize on that. And I actually do it with my daughter as well on the way to school. She's 6, and I feed her some eggs in the morning, thinking that's the best way for her to fill up for the day. Rather than eating the sort of rubbish school food, she's going to be actually eating some decent, food in the morning.
Absolutely.
And then by the time she gets home, she's ready for a nice big meal again. So that's kind of what we do for that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, it's
over to Jack. Pancreatitis in 2020 and became diabetic afterwards. Been low carb and off since then and lost 3.5 stone. Fantastic, Jack. Well done. I don't know what a gypsy tart is, but it's his thing. It's the same as, like, for me, it's a bacon turnover, which is everywhere. But for him, it's lucky because it's only available in Kent and he lives around
It's
Bristol.
in Bristol. Is it that thing with coconut sprinkles on the top and jam? I think there's jam in it, isn't there? And pastry. I know that something like that. He'll probably tell
Sounds
us.
pretty deadly combination to me
It
for
sounds a deadly
sugar
combo.
addicts. Yeah, yeah, it does.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Isn't it
that's
funny?
one way of
Like
doing it.
someone else had chippy chips. It's there's something usually about some sort of association. I don't know whether like our mums made it or it was always some sort of celebratory food that we have at home. It is, we have these real kind of strong emotional connections. Mum was definitely a food addict and a feeder, and she was a brilliant cook. So, we had loads of things that were sort of part of general family life, but also special occasions, and it's hard to break up with all of that. Oh, it's
There
brown.
you go.
Oh my god, brown sugar and condensed. Well, Jack, that would have been my thing if I'd known about it.
Yeah, in a
Condensed
tart
milk.
base.
Condensed milk was one of my things as a kid, because this often starts very young. I don't remember a
Yeah.
time when I wasn't obsessed with sweet things, and I used to sneak into the kitchen and eat condensed milk straight out of the tin with a teaspoon.
Yeah, nice. Actually, the only time I've ever had condensed milk was when I was on the top of a mountain in the Pyrenees, and they said, "You need to eat this." And they took the snow off the mountain, put it into a cup, poured condensed milk on top, and we all had to have that as a way to try to get our energy for the mountain climb. I realise now it's probably the worst thing because after about an hour, you're kind of then on the floor with a sugar crush.
You're on the crash. Yeah.
Yeah. Jack's telling us much more about this, but I'm going to leave that now because you know what? It sounds like
we're all triggered now, Jack, in a good way. Yeah, Daisy's online as well, and she's telling us as well. School dinners, yeah.
Yeah.
I think we did have that in our school dinners as well. I seem to remember that with a squirt of on top. Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. And Daisy's here. Hello, Daisy from Keto Woman. Again about gypsy tart. It's a pastry cake with a sweet concoction inside, made with evaporated milk and brown sugar. School dinners in Kent. My word, if you're having that for a school dinner, can you imagine Friday afternoon what the kids were like after they've had that? And then they're asleep by 3:30, even they're going home. That's incredible. Right, we do have another comment from Claire. Here we go. What if the fit and healthy lady with an all BMI wore a CGM for a couple of weeks so she can see what sugar does to her blood sugar levels? That's a really good idea. I did that for a couple of weeks. You can really get a good sense of how things, although it is bad for me. And the reason it's bad for me is an addiction reason, because I thought I'd put it on there. I'd see how my blood sugar levels were, and they were really boring because I was only eating like green vegetables and steak. So what did I do? I started eating bad things to see the effect on my blood sugar levels, and by the end of the week, I was back on it again. So I had to just say, "Don't do it." Anyway, so that worked for me. It made me realize how easy it would be to become insulin resistant.
The CGM is so interesting, particularly if you are struggling, because it's like immediate feedback, isn't it? There's going to be some guys at the conference that can also do immediate insulin resistant tests, because you can't actually get that in the UK from your GP. You can't get that the Kraft test where you. So there'll be some guys at the conference can do that if anyone's interested in knowing if they're getting insulin resistant.
Yeah, so fantastic. Now, I've just got a question for everyone who's listening now, not about tarts, because there's a lot of that coming in. Manchester chart mentioned by Nicola Locke there. I just want to ask people, what is your strategy? How is it that you manage to deal with addiction if you have an addiction? So, I see here that Daisy says swimming in the sea and walking her dogs is her best way. And
cold water plunging is really like known for it now. And if anyone's read Dopamine Nation, by Anna Lemke, which is an absolutely brilliant book about addiction. She really recommends cold water therapy. I'm working up to it, but yeah, absolutely, cold water, walking, any sort of physical activity actually is really good. Not for weight loss, but just for the sort of mental benefits, balancing benefits of it.
Yeah, definitely. There you go. So that's one. I think for me, it's kind of the walking does help. Like I said in the show, I find slowing things down is important. So I haven't tried it recently, but Mark Davison came on the podcast, and this works for addiction as well as for low carb and keto. And he said, if you're hungry, when you go to your fridge, open it, you should have already made 4 boiled eggs that sit in the middle of your fridge at all times. So if you really are hungry, there's 4 boiled eggs there. And he said, I've never eaten all 4. He said, that's a lot of like eggs to get through.
Egg, yeah.
Three at a push if you really are hungry. He said, but having those 4 eggs has been his way of trying to stop it from eating anything to actually I'm going to eat an egg. And he knows that that's something that's going to fill him up. It's full of protein, full of fat, and it's going to be really kind of like a good strategy for him. But I think slowing down the process is really important. And if that means kind of like not going into the fridge or planning ahead a little bit, or maybe going for a walk, whatever it might be, I think that's kind of something that works for my case. Definitely. What about yourself, Jen? What do you do?
Yeah, I've kind of got in some much better routines. So I do like a boot camp sort of exercise. David and I go running is a bit glorified, jogging in the mornings. I do yoga. I do my knitting, as I said, so trying to sort of, get in those, good sleep. Sleep's another thing. Like if you're stressed or poor sleep, you're much more likely to make poor food choices the next day. That's really been shown loads of times. So getting in good sleep hygiene, quite relaxing in the evenings, not too many screens. We'll all be awake at midnight tonight.
After this, it's stop them after this. Yeah, don't turn off now.
Jack said in the comments, I need to get a dopamine hit from another source, and that's absolutely it, really. I mean, often with ADHD, where it's about dopamine. You're kind of seeking it, if you like, and you can get it from bad ways like scrolling on your phone, alcohol, drugs, whatever it is. But yeah, trying to get it from exercise, from ticking things off your to-do list, from planning out your day, etc., and trying to get that dopamine from places other than food. Claire says walking and workouts. Fitbit. Yeah,
but this is look at the motivation.
Yeah, and planning. Planning, but because we tend to be, once we're again the addict brain. Once you're in a thing, you tend to get in a thing. So we can start to sort of get a bit addicted to the exercise, can't we? Or to the stats on the Fitbit. But that's in a good way, so long as it doesn't go too crazy. That can be a good thing. So learning, using those sort of skills and resources that you have, and bringing them into this project of sort of getting well. So, if you're an organized person, well, get organized, get planning your food, start making lists. If you're a person who likes to, maybe do it with someone else, get a buddy or join a group like SugarX, or I have a Clubhouse on a Wednesday night. So tomorrow night, 6 p.m. on Clubhouse, which is, you just download the app, look for Fork in the Road. And tomorrow night we're talking about the pros and cons of weighing and measuring food for food addicts. We have a different topic or a speaker every Wednesday, and you can listen to all the replays. So connect with other people. I think it's something we haven't mentioned so far, but a lot of us have sort of suffered in silence, feeling a bit ashamed and feeling we ought to be able to do better. But connect to this. There's loads of communities now out there that you can connect to and get support from, and feel like you're not the only one who has these crazy behaviors and thoughts. And
just remember, it's only crazy in the context of where humanity is today. That's really important to state. It's only crazy because you have access to ultra processed foods, sugar and carbs on a daily, if not minute by minute almost basis in society. And like Jen said there, in terms of evolution, your ancestors are the ones who are able to survive. The ones who stood in the background around the fruit tree and said, "Not for me, thanks." Their ancestors probably aren't here, or there's fewer of them. But the ones who have made it through evolution, now we have a food environment which is totally alien to anything that humanity's experienced for millions of years. And so, it's in a way, so the environment has changed so much, and that's the problem. And we as survivors are now in a world of abundance where it's actually damaging to us, and our cravings are completely unleashed because there's nothing to stop them. There's no famine or shortage. I'm not saying there should be, but there isn't a famine or shortage like there used to be. And that's what's going on here. So with addiction, I think you see it from that point of view, you realize actually this is normal, but at the same time, you can't let the addiction become the driver of your life and ruin your life. That's where you've got to manage things to then
Exactly.
realize what to do.
So what can I do? What do I have to do? You know, like you and I wear glasses so we can see the world. You know, it's like an adaptation so
Yeah,
that we can see the world. So we have to make adaptations so that we can, you know, live our, you know, be our best selves, which we're not when we're in the sugar. You know, we're just not our best selves. We don't want to talk to people, or we don't, you know, you kind of feel down, and you know, you don't like yourself, and nobody wants to be like that. So what do we need to do? Yeah, plan the food, you know, try and find a food plan that works for you, and then work on these other things that you know, are going to get you these feel good hormones in other ways. Look after yourself, take care of yourself, and yeah.
that's it. So, Jen, then I was going to say, we're just the last few moments of this live together. You have a conference coming up. Do you want to tell us all about that? And then I was going to tell everyone about how they can win a ticket for free, because I'm buying 5 extra tickets, which I want to give away to people who might want to go to the conference, but maybe they can't afford it. So, tell us a bit about the conference firstly.
Yeah, so May the 20th, which is coming up very soon, and it's Friday, and we're going to be in Bristol at the Bristol Royal Marriott Hotel for the day. And as I say, we've got Bitten Johnson, who some people will have heard of, but she's probably internationally the most well-known clinician in this field. And we've got Paul Early, Dr. Paul Early, who's past chair of the American Society of Addiction Medicine. There are 2 keynotes, but there's other people speaking, myself and Dave Avram Wolf, who we've also mentioned, coming over from the States. So it's going to be an amazing day. I mean, I've never met Bitten in person. I've worked with her over Zoom and done her course, and it's going to be fantastic to actually. Overeaters Anonymous will be there as well, telling people about what they do, because they have groups running around the UK. Yeah, so it's going to be quite something. And then the Saturday Sunday is the Public Health Collaboration Conference that a lot of us are speaking at again, which also is going to be very, very interesting, I think, this year. And we've not had one for this. Will be, you know, we missed the last 2, so it's going to be lovely to see everybody in person.
It feels like normality returning, which is lovely, isn't it? And
Mm.
just to let everyone know, I've got 5 tickets that I've purchased for the event. I'm going to be at the event as well. So I've also got an extra one for myself, but I've got 5 tickets to give away to people. So if you want to win one of those, it's actually incredibly, incredibly easy. All you need to do is go to Apple Podcasts. I don't think Spotify does it as yet, but Apple Podcasts does. And if you just leave a review for my podcast, I mean, hopefully a nice one. It doesn't have to be. It's up to you. You have to be honest. But a lovely review. If you've enjoyed this series in particular, please leave a review for the podcast and mention this series about food addiction with Jen. And the first 5, even bad ones, I will give those tickets to. Okay, so just make sure there's a way you can connect with me. And if you want to send me an email to say you've done that, so I can send your tickets to you, it's dan@uklowcarb.com. So dan@uklowcarb.com. And then I'll be very happy to get your tickets to you. I guess it's digital tickets. Is it Jen? So I can just send an email with the info, or?
Yeah, they would just need to bring the sort of proof of thing, so that you'd get a PayPal receipt, I think. So if they can just print that out or show it on their
I'll
phone.
just tell you the names is probably easy as well to let you
Yeah,
know.
if you
who
tell
they
us the
are.
names, we can just add it to the list. Yeah, correct.
Yeah. So and I think actually, you know what? Not only is it great to be there, because I think you know you're going to get a lot from the actual conversation. Being in a room with people in the same mindset, I think, is really useful as well, and just learning from each other and how we can manage all of this. Right, just a few more points here. So, firstly, quick question by Kate. Can you remind me the name of your Wednesday night 6 p.m. group, please? And thank you both so much.
Yeah, Kate, definitely come along. So it's the Clubhouse app. Download it to your phone, Android or Apple, and then if you search for Fork in the Road room, you'll find it. And I'm at Jen_Unwin on Clubhouse as well. If you follow me, you'd find the room that way, and you can listen to the replays as well. And that's me. I'm the same on Twitter at Jen_Unwin.
Great, fantastic. So check out Clubhouse. Yeah, it's an app, isn't it? I think it's on all mobiles now, isn't it? It was just on.
It was just,
Apple for
yeah,
a while.
they've expanded it now. And I post the link on Twitter, and I post it also. There's 2 really good Facebook groups, Sugar Bomb in Your Brain, which is Bitten's Facebook group, and No Sugar, I'm Sweet Enough, which is Vera Tarman's Facebook group. They're both recommended Facebook groups for people with food addiction. So I post a link in there as well every week.
Great. And just a final few thank yous. So thank you, Jen. Thank you very much for both. It's very interesting. Thank you for your expertise and time. I don't bring anything but experience, and Jen brings the experience and expertise. So a massive thank you to you, Jen, for sure. And then Claire says, I found your food addiction podcast series really interesting. Thank you. And that's, you know what, I think this is why I love doing series, because I think you do a podcast for an hour, which is great, but actually having a shorter episode, but more of them, means you can really dig into certain areas and topics in quite a lot of detail. And then you've got a week until the next time where you can dig into the next thing in a lot of detail. So I think they work quite well, and hopefully we'll do many more of them in the future. And then here we have Kathy, who just says, thank you, very interesting. And also Jack, who's done a great promotion this evening for North Kent based desserts. So there you go. Yeah. Cheers, Jack, to you as well.
We're all thinking about those now.
Julie, thank you both so much. Brilliant as ever. Oh, the praise is just coming in now is great, isn't
it? Lovely. Yeah.
We are a community, guys, and that's really important that we kind of have
thanks for coming along. It's great.
Yeah, you're part of this whole evening with us. Well, thank you so much, Jen, for the podcast. It's been really exciting making this series with you, and hopefully you can come back on soon and talk a bit more about the work you're doing and how you can all help us.
Yeah, and I'll see you on May the 20th, Dan.
See you on the May 20th. Right, take care, everyone. Have a lovely evening, morning, and night, whatever time it is where you are in the world, and we'll see you all in Bristol. Take care, guys. Bye.